A 5-day jaunt to Texas. D.C. Parks and Recreation Department employees at a training conference with more than just seminars and speeches, as seen in this conference YouTube video. And for the D.C. employees who made the trip, the timing was terrible.
I'm on your side. Don't screw it up, okay?
The trip made in October, just hours before D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray confronted congressional leaders asking for an end to the government shutdown, which threatened D.C.'s finances and all those local federal workers. At the same time, 30 D.C. employees in Houston for the National Recreation and Park Association annual exposition. What they didn't realize is News 4 I-Team cameras were there too, at one of the conference's evening social events. And under the Freedom of Information Act, we know exactly how much it costs taxpayers. 30 employees needing airfare, $200 a night hotel rooms, foods, and registration for the conference itself. Total price tag, about $54,000. The Parks Department paid some of the expenses days before the shutdown began, meaning it didn't come out of the district's shutdown contingency funds, and the agency got permission to hold off paying the rest until after the shutdown ended. Any concerns about travel to that extent with that many people?
Yeah, I am concerned about it. It was an important conference, important convention to go to, but there's just no way we should have sent that number of people at that level of expense.
We want to have an open space.
John Stokes, one of the Parks and Rec managers who made the trip, says yes, the convention was important.
It's really comprehensive training and education.
Dozens of seminars and presentations, and Stokes says while in Houston, the agency picked up a long sought-after certification, a CAPRA certification, one held by about 100 Parks departments nationwide. Conference organizers say the CAPRA is given to Parks departments with, quote, rigorous standards.
If it really were up to me, we would be sending more because it's just that important.
Even though conference organizers told the News 4 I-Team some free food was offered to attendees at the events, our review of receipts reveals all 30 employees from D.C. sought the same reimbursement for food expenses, the maximum, $71 a day, each day for 3 days, and about $50 a day while traveling. Receipts for those expenses were not provided, so we don't know exactly what they bought with that money. But you considered canceling.
Oh, we looked at the option of canceling and again weighed it against the benefits of actually going to attend.
We can do it by, fewer numbers. People can impart information when they come back. They can participate in conferences, teleconferencing as well. So there are other ways to do that without incurring a level of expense.
A conference spokeswoman says D.C. did need to send a representative to Houston to pick up that CAPRA certification, but neither the conference organizers nor D.C. could point to any rule that required 30 people show up for it. Scott MacFarlane, News 4 I-Team.
The News 4 I-Team canvassed the Capitol, and Scott MacFarlane discovered that even though federal workers throughout the country are on furlough, some of the conveniences that members of Congress enjoy are very much still in place. Scott?
Yeah, Jim, Congress is still spending your tax money on itself in ways you might not expect. No need to walk all the way. The underground subway that saves members of Congress the hike between their offices and the U.S. House floor is still running. The operators still on the job. Congress's in-house physicians, too. So are the staff at the privately run cafeterias, banks, and the independently operated post office at which members of Congress can grab a meal, cash a check, or buy stamps within feet of their offices. And the News 4 I-Team has learned the House recording studio at which members of Congress can use tax money to record cable TV shows for viewers back home also stays open. And the Franking Commission is still running, too. That's the commission that reviews mass mailings and newsletters members of Congress send back home, also at taxpayer expense. A House Administration Committee spokeswoman tells us both allow members of Congress to communicate with constituents. But David Williams of the Alexandria-based Taxpayers Protection Alliance says,
and what these perks and benefits do really help them get reelected. When you talk about a recording studio, when you talk about mail services, this is about getting reelected.
Some operations are closed. The shoe shine, the House locksmith, too. And yes, senators must push their own buttons on the elevator during the shutdown. The elevator attendants weren't on duty during our check. But there is still IT support, and members of Congress will have continued access to their free parking spots at Dulles and Reagan. And the graphics department that makes those signs you see on the U.S. House floor also stays open. And members of Congress will also continue to get paychecks toward their $174,000 a year salaries, and they get benefits during the shutdown. All the while, many of their political aides and office staffers will be furloughed. former Senate staffer Brad Fitch lived through the 1995 shutdown.
Congressional staff who are type A personalities who really love their jobs, and that's why they're doing it, because they're not doing it for the pay. It's very hard to be told you're not essential or you have to go home.
A spokesman tells me Washington, D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton is now issuing only digitized newsletters, no mass mailings to save resources and money. Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown tells us he'll donate his paycheck during the shutdown. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina via social media says the same. Scott MacFarlane, News 4 IT.
Government workers are furloughed, memorials closed, but members of Congress are still using their members-only fitness center up on Capitol Hill.
The congressional committee overseeing the gym announced it was closed due to the shutdown. But the News 4 I-Team's Scott MacFarlane learned otherwise after he was tipped off by some of the staffers on the Hill. Scott?
Yeah, Pat, a lot of people making a lot of sacrifices amid this shutdown, but some members of Congress are not sacrificing their private gym privileges. They will not allow cameras inside these double doors in the basement of the U.S. House Rayburn building, just down the escalators from where U.S. House members have their offices. But our cameras found some of the fitness equipment sitting wrapped outside. One former congressman tells the News 4 I-Team there's more than just your ordinary equipment here, though. There's also a basketball court and an indoor swimming pool. One Alexandria-based taxpayer watchdog group says that members still have access to a private pool and basketball court amid the shutdown means they are, quote, still enjoying creature comforts. The News 4 I-Team waited outside to catch up with House members walking out of the private gym today. It's a comfort at a time when so many people are not comfortable.
Well, it's not a comfort for me. I'm at my age, it's not particularly comfortable. All I do is take a shower.
He added,
Democrat, I get an opportunity to discuss with Republicans in a non-public, private way.
Other members of Congress walking out of the gym declined to talk to us. All the while, the U.S. House Staff Fitness Center is closed because of the shutdown, and it was congressional staffers who asked to remain anonymous who tipped off the News 4 I-Team, one of whom called this hypocritical, saying the U.S. House members get to keep their gym, but the staff is shut out because of the shutdown. Is it a creature comfort that perhaps you shouldn't have at this moment?
I eat 3 meals a day. If I didn't eat them in the cafeteria where I'm going now to have lunch, I would eat it somewhere else. If I didn't work out in this gym and I wanted to exercise, I might go to another.
Last Wednesday, the Committee on U.S. House Administration, which oversees the Capitol grounds, announced the Members Wellness Center would be closed in the shutdown. Turns out the fitness center employees are furloughed, and one congressman tells me the members are cleaning up after themselves inside, but it remains very much open. A spokeswoman for the Speaker of the House says the decision was made by the architect of the Capitol's office. That office did not return our request for comment, but the gym isn't totally free for U.S. House members. They do pay a monthly fee for access. Scott MacFarlane, News 4 IT.
The federal government has been closed for 15 days now. Hundreds of thousands of workers have been furloughed. As the News 4 I-Team Scott MacFarlane explains now, members of Congress are still spending tax money on speeches and on spin.
The parks are barricaded, the offices closed, so many government workers at home. But business is booming here. Congress's in-house TV and radio studios. A U.S. House database reviewed by the News 4 I-Team reveals about 50 news conferences since October 1st, many of which were staged here and here. And payroll records we reviewed show simply staffing the House and Senate TV studios costs more than $1 million tax dollars a year, including one event today beneath the bright lights. And this main House studio isn't the only one. In fact, there are 4 in the U.S. House alone, within steps of members of Congress's offices. This here is Studio B. All of them have been deemed essential, which means all of them have remained opened and staffed during this long shutdown, even as so many things have been closed and so many workers furloughed. And not everybody's happy about it. The Virginia-based National Taxpayers Union issuing this statement today. The studios, quote, look more like a perk, not a necessity. Lawmakers can and do have wide access to broadcast outlets of all kinds.
Okay, I'm on your side.
We saw that last week. News 4 cameras among a swarm of media surrounding the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, and D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray at an impromptu walk outside the Capitol. But Ron Bonjean, a former communications advisor for former House Speaker Dennis Hastert, says when Congress is stalemated, news conferences are the negotiations.
These press conferences also send messages to the other side, where they may not be necessarily picking up the phone that often, but they're doing a news conference. And that's how usually leaders are finding out the reaction to these proposals.
An estimated $38,000 spent on the staffers who operate those studios, among other tasks, since the shutdown began. A spokeswoman for the U.S. House committee overseeing the studios says they were kept open to, quote, maintain coverage of House proceedings. Scott MacFarlane, News 4 I-Team. The holiday season, a busy season on the rails. Loaded Amtrak trains pulling in and out of Union Station in D.C. and Maryland and Virginia. The News 4 I-Team jumped on board a weekday ride on Amtrak's Capital Limited route en route to D.C. from Chicago. We found plenty to eat and drink in the cafe car.
We had Pepsi, that Pepsi Sierra Mist.
Candy, snacks, a turkey sandwich, those cookies there too. And for lunch, I bought an Angus cheeseburger, trail mix, and a soda. The credit all right? $13.50. But you help pay too, with Amtrak losing millions on food, an estimated $15 on my meal alone. Taxpayers are now supporting the company and helping pay off its losses. U.S. Congressman John Mica has long criticized Amtrak's dining in cafe cars.
This is unfortunately a government-mandated, government-subsidized, bottomless pit operation that has to stop.
A series of internal Amtrak audits show Amtrak loses $1 for every dollar in food it sells. On the Chicago to D.C. route, auditors found Amtrak collected $2.4 million selling food last year, but lost $2.8 million by offering the food service on that route in the first place. A similar amount of red ink for drinks and food on about a dozen long-distance routes nationwide. $13 million in losses selling food on the auto train, which runs south to Florida. And there are several reasons why, according to audits reviewed by the News 4 I-Team. Overstaffing cited on some routes. On many long-distance Amtrak trains, they spend more on labor selling the food than they earn on the food. Nearly as much spent storing the food, commissary costs, as they earn selling it. And they've been handing out free food and booze to some passengers on some of the more expensive routes, Amtrak's auditors say, and they told management the free handouts are leading to losses.
Labor costs, storage costs, delivery costs, marketing, it's a loss.
But passengers say Amtrak needs to serve those drinks and sandwiches.
The cafe car is still open.
To lure customers. Maureen Porter, a frequent passenger between D.C. and Pittsburgh, told the News 4 I-Team she'd be less likely to ride without the coffee she bought, and that even at a loss, Amtrak ought to keep selling.
That's well worth it. This is infrastructure. I mean, this is everything we need to keep the country connected.
Amtrak told us it's made progress, losing less money on food and drinks than a few years ago. Ridership is up on some routes, and in a statement to the News 4 I-Team, Amtrak says it will, quote, address staffing issues and explore new pricing in the coming months, and that it hopes to break even in a few years. One major Amtrak line does break even on food and drinks, the highly popular Northeast Corridor from D.C. north through New York, which Amtrak tells us had 11.4 million riders last year alone. Scott MacFarlane, News 4 I-Team.